Hey everyone, this is Megan Hillier from Know Your Ancestors, and you're listening to the Know Your Ancestors podcast. Many of us have an innate desire to understand our roots, to know where we come from, and to understand the lives of our ancestors. On the show, I sit down with content creators and entrepreneurs to share some of the stories that I've uncovered and compiled about their own ancestors. Watch and listen as we discuss the traumatic and life-changing events of their close ancestors that helped shape who these guests are today. Hello and welcome to the podcast today. Today's going to be a quick look at World War I personnel files in Canada. So for the last podcast that I had Kelsey Hansen on, I was able to find service file records for her great-great-grandfather, Lawrence Larson. And I think a lot of people don't understand how easy it is to locate these and that you can find them for free on the Library and Archives Canada website. So I'm going to show you how to do that in case I realize a lot of you probably don't have ancestors who served in World War I from Canada. But if you do, this is a quick way to find those service records, and they are quite extensive. So if you go to library-archives.canada.ca, or you can just look up Library and Archives Canada, it takes you to this website where you can look for records. Now, they have, if you scroll down a bit under collection, there's genealogy and family history, and you can see some of the different records they have. They have census records, some information about accessing vital records, citizenship and naturalization, which you mostly need to submit to order those. They don't just have those online. And then military history. So under the military history, you can see that they have information about First World War, the history of it, Second World War. The personnel file records for World War II are sealed. You have to request them, and you have to be a relative and show that your ancestor has passed away. They do have records for people that did pass away in World War II, so those who were killed in action or died as a result of accident or illness while in service, or died of injuries related to service. You may be able to access their personnel files here. So when you are on this website, you can go to military history, and we're going to look for the First World War personnel records. So these are really cool documents. I found one a few years ago for my great-grandfather who served in the army in the First World War. And it was really interesting to look through the whole thing and to see all the information. He even had like his will, his military will in there. So if you have an ancestor who served in the First World War from Canada, I highly recommend looking for these. They're actually on Ancestry also, but if you don't have an Ancestry subscription, you can get them for free on Library and Archives Canada. So we go there, then we just click here, and then we're going to search for these records. So you can just put their name in here. If you think it could have been spelled a different way, you can change the spelling, or you can like put a star if you want to, have different, if there could be different spellings at the end of the name, but we're just going to put that in because for this website it has to be spelled exactly what you're typing. So there's 4 that showed up, and I know that this first one is him because it has the same middle name, and I've looked at it before, but you do want to look at them and make sure it's actually your ancestor before you just assume it is. So just because they have the same name doesn't mean it's him, but when we click on it and I can look at his birth date, I can see the name of his wife, where he lived, where he was born, all of that matches, so pretty confident that's him. Okay, so you will want to look at that and verify that before you assume it's for your ancestor. Okay, so we are going to look at these pages. There's 3 different files, but this one actually includes the information from these 2, so we're just going to look at this one. It's 78 pages long, so there's quite a lot in there, which is why I recommend looking at these files, which are free and they're digitized, and you're able to look for them relatively easily if their name, is easy to locate. If it's, not John Smith, but even if it is, you could look through them all and find the right one. So here is his military file, which is quite extensive. And then you can look through it and learn all about their military service. So if you listen to the last week's episode with Kelsey, I researched and shared with her about her great-grandmother. This is her great-grandmother's father. And so Kelsey didn't know that he even served in World War I, but we were able to look through this document, and that's how I found information about his military service, that he ended up being discharged because he was ill. He couldn't serve anymore, and they had him in the hospital for quite a while trying to figure out how to help him. And he attributed his illness to being underwater up to his neck for 18 hours. And that information was on this service file. And so for your ancestor, you do want to look through this and learn about their service, learn about where they served, what battalion or company they were part of, and then you can look at the history of that military company or battalion and see where it was that they fought, understand the history of that service, which can help you understand more of them, more of their trauma, more of their experiences, which is kind of the whole point of doing this work, right? So you can see his name here, where he was living, where he was born, his wife, date of his birth, his occupation. He was actually a farmer, but maybe he was a machinist too. And then there's all these documents about him, okay? There's even the physical description, which of course they needed that information to help identify fallen soldiers or injured soldiers, which is kind of interesting just to look at, how tall they were, if they had any marks or anything that was significant. It's kind of interesting. Okay, so then you can look through that and just learn about them, learn about the service that they did in the military. You can see that he was part of the 46th Battalion, and then maybe we could look at the history of that 46th Battalion. We do see later on that he served in France in that 46th Battalion of the Canadian Infantry, so then maybe we can find a history of that battalion. Okay, you can even see the pension that he was awarded and all of that. So it's a really cool file, and if you had military ancestors in Canada in World War I, you definitely want to check this out. Okay, so then I was able to find that we can look up the history of these different companies or battalions. So he was part of the 46th Battalion of the Canadian Infantry when he was first went to the hospital because he was sick. So date of service was August 10th, 1916. Okay, and so we know that he was in that battalion at that time. So there is a collection on this website where you can search for these war diaries, and you have to search for them a certain way, which I'm going to show you how you can do that. So when you are in the collection search, you need to type in 9-52 War Diaries and then put in whatever the battalion or company or whatever it is that they were in. So I put the 9-52 War Diaries 46th Battalion. And these are what showed up. So then they all have different dates. So we know that he was pretty much done by the summer of 1916. And so this is later, so we don't want that one. And so we're just going to look through the dates. So here's August 10th. So that's about when he stopped being with them. So here's August 1st, August 31st. So we could look at that one. Oh, that's the 4th Battalion. It's not even looking like we have the 46th anymore. So they just have war diaries for after he was there. But maybe that can give us some insight as well. So for your ancestor, you would just have to see, if they have the war diaries for their battalion or their company or their ship log or whatever, and see what you can learn. So I'm just going to click on this one and see what we can find out. So let's see. If we zoom in here, and we got another page. Okay, so there's not a ton here. Oh no, there is a ton. There's 578 pages. Okay, so we can look at that. And if you're really dedicated and want to learn what kind of service your ancestor did in World War I, you can browse through all of these and look at that. Let's just take a look at one of these. So we have from August 16th at 7:10 a.m., the 46th Battalion Brigade trained for overseas service. They arrived and disembarked. They detrained and marched to Steenvoorde and went into billets in that vicinity. They marched to Renengelst and Akoy, went into reserve trenches at 8 p.m. for instruction in trench warfare with the 18th Battalion, 4th Brigade, 2nd Division as instructors. So it is actually really interesting if you do happen to find the War Diaries for your ancestors' battalion or company, whatever group they were in, can be really insightful. So hopefully that was helpful for you, or you can share this with your Canadian friends who might have military ancestors that served in World War I. It's a really great way to understand more about our ancestors' military service. If you don't have ancestors that served in Canada, but you have some, look up those records for your ancestors in the United States. You can locate records there as well. And I feel like learning about our military ancestors can really help understand some of that generational trauma. War was a very traumatic thing and affected these men greatly and women. And so I think understanding what service they were involved in, what battles they were involved in, can really help to shed some light on some of those traumatic events. I also wanted to let you know that I am now offering research services. So if you want help with your family tree, I know not everyone has the time or desire to learn how to research their ancestors, but maybe you do want to connect to your own ancestors. You want to learn about them like I share about on this podcast with our guests. You want to do that. You want to understand the lives of your ancestors, but you don't want to dedicate the time that it takes, because it does take a lot of time. You can hire Know Your Ancestors to research your family tree. I have a bunch of genealogists that are ready to help, that specialize in different locations, and we can research your ancestors. So maybe you want to just learn about one of your ancestors. Maybe you have a brick wall that you want help with, or maybe you want to just get your family tree started, and we can research as much as we can and start building your tree out as far as we can go. Whatever it is, we can help you with that, and packages start at $500. I'm working on my website right now, but it's not quite ready to go with that offer. So right now you can email me hello@knowyourancestors.co or reach out to me on social media, and we can get started with that. I'd love to meet with you to discuss what's possible and how you can connect to your ancestors more. So thanks so much again for being here, for supporting this podcast. If you can leave a rating or review, that can really help get our podcast pushed out to more people, and that would be fantastic. All right. Well, thanks so much for being here today, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching or listening to the podcast today. If you want to start learning about your own ancestors, you can get my free mini class called 3 Steps to Start Knowing Your Ancestors. It comes with a workbook. It's super short, but has actionable steps that you can take to start knowing your own ancestors. Just go to knowyourancestors.co/3steps or click the link in the show notes to sign up. Thanks again for being here, and we'll see you next time.